I'm not very bright, I guess, and but I did learn fairly quickly what it was necessary to win at our level. And the big thing was just going out and recruiting. That finally dawned on me that you could be the greatest coach in the United States, and if you don't have the talent, the athletes, it doesn't make any difference. You can know all of the things that are necessary to do, and your kids can do those things as hard as they can, but unless they have talent, you aren't going to get very far. And so I think that I learned that lesson pretty fast. And I began to understand what Mr. Papik had understood for a long time, that recruiting quality athletes is the key to any program, the success of any program. I don't care who you are, what sport it is. If you don't have the kids, forget it. You're just spinning your wheels. You're just not going to be successful. And I don't, as I look back on it, the years that we had the greatest amount of success were the years that we had the greatest amount of talent. And the ability of the coach to actually instruct and devise a training program and all that, all the stuff that you read, the X's and O's, almost anybody can do that. That's not the big thing. The big thing in coaching is getting the right people that have the talent and the drive, the willpower to be successful, and then to give them an opportunity to develop that. And you let it, pretty much go with that. And we made the transition from a really, really bad year in '73 to really a pretty good year after that. And we had good years before that. 69, 70 was a really good year for us. And but we, I think of some of the kids. In fact, Denny Bach was a quarter miler for us from Fairbury, Nebraska, and he just stopped in to see me yesterday. And Denny was a really good quarter miler for us, and we got talking about that year, that '73 year. He went through that with me, and we got laughing about it. It was funny now, but it wasn't very funny then. We had all kinds of problems, and mainly because of my immaturity as a head coach and understanding what all things were that were necessary to be successful. I had really a narrow viewpoint as to what my job was. I didn't realize all of the stuff that went on and had to be taken care of. We got into obviously we'd had some degree of success then with our men's program, and our women's program at that point was virtually non-existent. I mean, we had maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 girls out. Even when we won our first conference championship in 1980, I just happened to see that picture the other day of that team, and we had 15 girls on the track team. at that point. So we really didn't get into any big numbers early on, and mainly because they just weren't available. One of the things that the people who were involved in the Title IX enforcement didn't take into consideration at all is that before the colleges could meet the requirements of Title IX, the high schools had to meet it because there was no pool of athletes down here. And until the high schools developed their programs so that there was a pool of athletes to choose from, the colleges were, we were scrambling just to get kids out of the classroom and out of the PE classes to stock our teams. And we, besides which, it had to be a nightmare for Mr. Papik and Bob Erickson, who was our athletic director after Mr. Papik left. And because we were in the NCAA, we were in the NAIA, we were in the NIAC, and we were in the AIAW. And all those organizations had different eligibility rules. And they're trying to make sure that everybody, any one person, met all the rules that applied to them had to be a nightmare. And I'm sure that during that period somebody slipped through the cracks and wasn't eligible when we participated, but everybody was so screwed up at that time that it really didn't make any difference. Our first real success, I guess, from the female standpoint, was in the late 80s. Oh, excuse me, in the late 70s. We had our first national place winner, Anita Saltzman, Anita Burge now, was finished fourth in the AIAW National, and would have been in today's lexicon an All-American. However, at that point, the AIAW was being sued by the NCAA for the use of the term All-American. The NCAA said we have a copyright on that term, and it took a federal court ruling to say no, that's a common term and anybody can use it. And but the same way with the NAIA, they couldn't declare anybody an All-American until after this court ruling. And Anita got caught in that, and she did a nice job. She was one of the better high school athletes from Grant, Nebraska, and came here, was just a wonderful kid to try and work with. I only had a chance to work with her for 2 or 3 years, but she was a quick learner. She was a very bright girl, and athletically reasonably talented. She wasn't terrific, but she had some good talent, and she could pick things up really fast. As I remember her having trouble learning how to hurdle. She was not a natural hurdler, and she was having trouble getting to the first hurdle on step. And one day, it was indoors during the winter, and so she said, "Would you come on and help me on a Saturday?" And we spent a whole day Saturday working on hurdles. And it was the first time I'd ever worked with a three-point start. And that was, in the 70s, so it was before it was very common. And we got her to the first hurdle and over it and got this thing straightened around. And after that, she never had a bit of trouble. It was just one of those breakthrough moments when she picked the thing up and just ran with it. And I think that at that point in time, she was really the first Doane athlete that got involved seriously with the multi-event thing and as an event. And of course, we've had a lot of success with those, both male and female, particularly in the last 5 or 6 years. I don't know that we didn't spend the amount of time on that event that we do now. I mean, that's a specific group of people that are designated as multi-eventers, where all the multi-eventers prior to that time, to this more recent time, were all hurdlers or jumpers or something initially, and then they just gravitated to the multi-events later on. It was that first part of my career here as a head coach was really went fast, as I was so busy trying to learn what being a head coach was all about, that I just, man, it just seemed like it flew by. And the kids that we were very fortunate in 1974 to pick up a group of very, very talented kids, and they stuck it out. They stuck here for 4 years, and they weren't leaving. And we picked up a couple of transfers, and it was that were really very strong, and particularly in the later 70s. And it was a period of real education. It was a big change period here on the campus. Phil Heckman was big into building buildings. We probably built more buildings during his 20-year tenure as president as at any time in the history of the college. Put a Walker to replace the old Merrill that burned down. Communications building, Fuhrer, Sheldon Hall, women's dorm, the quads. Those were all built during Phil's tenure as a president. And so things were, he liked to say, well, I'm going to keep the place looking like a battlefield, as if it was all tore up at some point in time, all during that period. And it was, from that standpoint, it was exciting. And it was always something new and different going on. I think we started getting more comfortable with the idea that we were going to be a winner. That was one of the big things with Mr. Papik. He was a winner, and for many of us, winning was not a usual thing, and that we were, when we did win, it was wow, but I think we got more comfortable with with the idea that we're going to be number one and going to have the quality program in the area. And then and our women got into that fairly early in their existence here. The first couple, well, first 5 or 6 years was pretty difficult. We were just trying to find our way, and we didn't really know what was going on. It was a learning period for everybody. But once our women got to the point where they were starting to be very competitive, then it just took off, and it became an accepted fact on our campus that we were going to have good women's track. And it was the 80 was our first NIAC championship for women. We won the men's and women's indoor that year. And from then on, boy, it just kind of grew like Topsy.